In this week's episode of Overboard, we talk about 90s cars. We talk about 90s cars quite a lot. We got a bit carried away, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah. But we also talk about Rich's story of wronging in car sales.
Yes, we did. Well, I wasn't gonna talk about it, and then completely unprompted, I talked about it.
So, all that to look forward to, and more.
It's amazing.
Maybe.
I didn't know you were going to start talking again.
Sorry. We could just use that.
Yeah, probably just cut it off.
Hello and welcome to Overboard. I'm Scroff and this is Kitch.
Yeah, you've done it for me.
Yay!
Because you know I'm not going to.
Yeah, because I just got tired in the end.
It gets boring, doesn't
Everyone
it?
gets tired in the end.
Everyone gets tired. Everyone's so tired.
so tired. What a cheery note to start on.
Yeah,
good.
Same as last week.
Yeah. That's, What have you been up to this week then, Kitch?
I don't know.
I have already forgotten.
I have forgotten. I've been working on...
Preferably say something you didn't say last time, because the last one we recorded was actually only 2 days ago. So you need to pick something from...
Oh, well, today I fitted some mirrors to that TVR.
Oh, well, that's cool.
It had no mirrors on it.
Good.
Door mirrors.
Nice.
So I fitted door mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
I have started selling off parts of the Saxo VTR that I bought for my kids for their birthday.
Mm-hmm.
So, because we're going to scrap it. Yay, great birthday present.
More scrapping things.
Yeah.
That's coming apart tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah, it's too far gone. It's too rusty.
Very rusty.
This is the one I drove back from Kent, and I thought the car was lowered at the back. Because I assumed, because they're torsion bar suspension on the back, I thought someone had adjusted the back so that it sat low, and had previously had lowering springs on the front, and then at some point taken them out and put standard springs back in. What it actually was the floor that the subframe was bolted to was coming through the car. So the car was kind of lowering itself on top of the subframe.
Oh.
It drove surprisingly well. It has to be honest. Like, it does make me laugh because you think we've got all these people who spend so much on uprated dampers and strut braces, hit this and polybush that and everything like that. And I thought, well, I drove this thing back with the back end literally disconnected, and it was actually all right. So you think, how much difference do these little strut braces and things actually make?
I thought what you were going to say then is you get these people who spend so much money on like lowering springs and adjusting the torsion bars, and all they need really to do is just have no rear floor.
Well, that's a cheaper way of doing it. Yeah. All Saxos will do it because they all rust. So we're going to strip that down. So mostly this week I've been doing a lot of stripping cars down, listing things for sale.
Sounds like fun.
Stuff like that. Not really.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
It means to an end, but nothing interesting, unfortunately. I've got my. I am now the owner of the D Super.
Oh, you got your V5.
I won my battle.
Great.
I won my battle with DVLA.
Good. They didn't have to inspect it.
They did inspect it.
They did inspect it.
Oh gosh,
okay,
They
right.
came to inspect it.
What did the inspector do? Come and go? Yeah, that's fine.
He came in and took some pictures of it, and because the engine's not in it.
Right. Okay.
And apparently that is an issue for DVLA. But the inspector company, they said, where is the engine? I said, it's in front of it. They said, what? In front of it? I was like, it's literally half a metre in front of it. You're looking at it now. It's how close is that to the car?
Oh, I mean, half a metre is about right.
The engine number is about 1.5 metres further forward from where it will be.
I mean, you could literally have got an engine crane and rested it in the engine.
I could have done, but not easily. But yes.
Well, no, but my point is that like it wouldn't have made much difference to its integrity to the vehicle.
No, that's it.
Whether it was there or there, really.
So that's the engine that's going in it, because the one that came with it is knackered. It's just rust.
And wasn't original anyway.
That wasn't original either. So in their wisdom, DVLA have put the engine number as the one I said was not going back in it, and not the one that is going in it. So I've got to change it again.
So you now have to change that. And they're going to turn around and say we need to inspect it properly.
Quite possibly. And said, well, you've literally already inspected it. And I showed you the engine that's going in it with the number, and they've still managed to cock it up. So, but what...
Well, you're remarkably controlled about this. I'd be fizzing.
No, because I'm just happy that I managed to get it sorted, because all the comments I was getting on YouTube were, that car's stolen, it's been rung, it's clearly been rung. the registration is clearly on another car. If you go on DVLA and you punch the registration into DVLA, it says it's sawn. And it comes up with another DS. I'm like, no, it comes up with that one. Why are we bringing another car into it?
Who's ringing a DS?
Exactly. Exactly. It's because all the ID plates.
Just going to do a bunch of petrol station thefts in my 1974 D Super.
The car's all the ID plates are missing off it.
Yeah, but that was because some garage tried to claim ownership of it.
I think something dodgy has happened.
Yeah.
But thankfully, the chassis number is still stands
where it needs to be. Yeah. Which is your defining kind of point.
If I didn't have that in there, I would have had trouble.
Yeah. So fair enough.
So now that is clear.
Good.
And I just haven't had time to do anything with it.
That's some really positive news.
I think it's quite positive.
A good thing has happened.
A positive thing has happened.
That's a really cheerful thing. We can go forward. I
wouldn't go really cheerful. It's the bare minimum of what should have happened.
I'm being positive because we started the podcast on a tired note.
That's because lots of tired, sad, annoying, depressing, negative things have happened this year already.
Agreed, but we should take the positives.
How was your Saab?
So I took the Saab in to have its clutch done, which was one of the negatives. As you remember on last week's podcast, I explained how the clutch told me it was broken after I'd done the test drive and bought the car.
It's annoying. If it had told you that before,
it would have been helpful.
Because you'd have been like, I'm not going to buy you then.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, no, it's you.
What do you mean?
You'd have been like, nah.
That should be fine.
I'll just get someone to change it.
I think I would have not bought it.
Yeah, I think in your current state of mind, you'd have gone, no.
No, bad thing. Took it to the clutch place. Clutch place rang me yesterday and said, was the steering wheel always on straight? And I said, yes. And they said, oh, okay. We'll sort that out for you.
We don't need to sort it out. It's already straight.
Well, no, because they said it's not
not anymore. It's not.
I said, okay, all right. And then I phoned them up later that day and I said, is it finished yet? And they said, well, we sorted the tracking out, so the steering wheel's straight, but the airbag light's on now. And I said, okay. And to be fair to them, they said, hang on, don't worry, we know the airbag light.
No, I'll tell you what they've done.
What?
They've taken the steering wheel off and put it on again. And that's what's broken the connector on the airbag. They haven't done the tracking. I'm not saying for certain. I don't know who it is.
I'm going to have to go and...
But there is a chance.
Check.
Well, when you get it, turn it full lock all the way to the right,
Yeah.
see how far it goes, then wind it the other way.
Yeah.
And if you've got less one way than the other, that's all they've done. They've just taken the wheel off and put it back on.
Right, I'm going to have some words, hopefully.
Check it.
I will check it. So that's good.
And you can say to them, it's got an uneven amount of lock one way to the other. And they'll say, but it might have had that before. And you say, no, because I bought the car and I inspected that.
Yeah.
On the test drive, I made a point of saying to the owner, I'm going to check it's got an even amount of lock one way or the other. It no longer does.
Yeah.
Sort it out.
Yeah.
Although, do you want them to sort it out? This is the issue you get with garages, isn't it? Because if they've cocked something up, now you don't trust them.
Yeah, well, quite.
So then you say, rectify it. Well, do you want them to rectify it? You don't trust them.
I mean, this is the problem.
You're stuck, aren't you?
How much money do I then throw at it if I take it to somewhere else
None,
and say...
scrap it.
Oh, I can't just lose that.
Just scrap it.
Just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Get rid of it.
Yeah. Just set fire to it.
Cars, eh?
Oh, man. At the moment, we are sat in a broken car.
That's true.
We are sat in a car that is...
We should introduce you to Rich's 1995? 95, is it? It's a Citroen Xantia Activa, dating from sometime in the 90s. It's an N-Reg. Good.
I think it was built in It's one of the earliest ones in the country.
Okay.
I only know of one other that's marginally older than this.
Right.
I think it was built in November 95.
Okay.
Registered January or February 96.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a Xantia Activa and it's such an early one. It doesn't have aircon at all.
Yeah, because the later ones had aircon.
Yeah, and they had fake wood.
Was it, because I know on some Xantias you could choose between aircon and a roof. Did the Activas all come with aircon and a roof? Because they were quite a high spec,
they did do that. I think it was a no-cost option.
Right, okay.
I used to love that. NCO.
No-cost
option. I think it was a no-cost option to have a sunroof instead of aircon on a normal Xantia.
That sounds about right.
I think on the Activa, they all had aircon.
Right.
But the sunroof was a cost option. You
Right.
can add it on top of.
Okay.
Because a lot of people don't like the sunroof because it eats into the roof space.
Yeah.
It's got a slightly lower roof.
Yeah.
But I've not seen a Xantia Activa without aircon up past 96 because that one there, which we're looking at, they can't see that. There's another one there. Yeah. That's a 96.
Less intact.
That is. Yes, that was. I bought that some time ago, and I was going to make my V6 conversion, as I alluded to last week. That one's been written off. It's been a motoring journalist drove that, and I don't know exactly how the event went.
Never let a motoring
but I
journalist
imagine
drive your car.
it started with watch this. Because they were in the fens where the roads just do like dead straight, then 90 degrees, then dead straight, then 90 degrees.
Yes.
And he went into a corner and took the back axle out of a Ford C-Max coming the other way. Oh. So...
that's a hefty crash.
Yeah. I would say that is a driving error.
Yes.
You would say, but I don't know if he would say that.
Definitely a mistake has been made.
Yeah, so I bought that, and I didn't know whether to fix it or to whether to... It is slightly structurally biffed. It's not It's not massively out. I don't think the suspension alignment's out, but the front end is wonky. But yeah, that's a slightly later one. So it's got aircon. It's got the fake wood. It had the wooden gear knob. Oh. The gear knob is actually wood.
Now you know me. I love a bit of fake wood. I do like a bit of fake wood.
You like fake wood?
Yeah, I do like fake wood. I like a bit of fake wood. I'm a sucker for any sort of wood,
you
real
love
or
wood.
fake in cars. Yeah, give me wood.
When men have wood, you love it.
I take wood.
Yes.
With great pleasure.
Yes. Willingly.
Willingly and with great
you
aplomb.
Enjoy people giving you wood.
I do. I certainly do. Yeah. We're still talking about cars, right?
Yeah. What were you talking about?
I'm not talking. I'm still talking about cars as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yes, they have a wooden gear knob, an actual wooden gear knob, which will be for sale. And but these ones don't. These would have had a black plastic one. This one doesn't have the original anymore because it had disintegrated, so it had like a Toyota one or something in it.
Oh, right.
And then I found this the other day, which is a Peugeot 106 replica gear knob from Wish.
Okay.
Paid $3.99 for it.
There we go.
And then complained about the quality and got my $3.99 back.
So this is a free gear knob?
That's a free gear knob. It didn't fit, so I had to glue it on. But it actually looks like it's... It actually looks like it's meant to be there.
It kind of does, actually. Yeah, it does look about right, to be fair. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, and it's got the old standard Xantia gear change.
Yeah. I do like a Xantia. This is the thing. Xantias, we are going to talk a bit about Citroens. I know we always say this is not a Citroen podcast, but we are going to talk a little bit about Citroens in this episode.
But we're doing the 90s.
Because we are going to do the 90s.
Yeah.
And part of the reason for that is kind of the unsung heroes of the 90s. Cars like this one that we're sitting in right now. It's almost like we planned this. This is definitely a Q car. This is a tremendous
the Elk
Q
test winner.
Definitely, yeah.
Which is... a little bit contentious. It might have done it in the day, but nowadays everyone's like, "Oh, it's still unbeaten to this day," and it's like,
I would question that.
Not, is it?
Yeah, I mean, look, these corner astonishingly well. So for listeners who aren't aware, Rich, I will now try to explain the Activa suspension system, and then Rich will tell me all the ways in which I'm wrong afterwards.
Yes.
Essentially, it pushes itself back upright. Instead of using fancy dampers, you've got anti-roll bars underneath, which obviously stop it from rolling over, and it uses hydraulics to push extending bits of the dampers out one way and the other.
No.
Okay. I was doing well, though. I was doing all right.
Well, it has got an anti-roll bar.
It has got an anti-roll bar that pushes itself. It pushes itself back up.
The anti-roll bar is manipulated. Yeah.
Okay. I see. Okay.
It manipulates its anti-roll bars. So the struts that it has are largely standard Xantia struts.
Yeah.
The anti-roll bars have their own hydraulic struts on them.
Okay.
So on this side, it's got one on the near side front and one on the offside rear.
Okay.
So if you go around a corner and you're hoofing it to the right, the car will try and lean to the left.
So it'll push the anti-roll bar
So that damper will extend and force the anti-roll bar back up.
I see.
Which will, in counterpoint, on the other side, pull it down.
That's my misunderstanding. I'd assumed the hydraulic strut was part of the anti-roll bar. Okay, right.
No, it's got a separate damper. They're called active rams.
Right, okay.
And that's why it doesn't affect the ride.
No, because the rest of it's just standard Xantia, basically.
Yeah.
It's not standard Xantia, but it is in terms of...
In fact, it doesn't actually use the rams initially. There's three phases of it, and it only uses the rams on the last phase.
Okay.
It stiffens the grips the suspension very slightly, and then like it stiffens the damper, the ram, and it doesn't actually physically pull it the other way unless you go beyond a certain amount of steering angle.
It then needs to.
Yeah, and it works fiendishly well. I mean,
it's very, very good.
You can get underneath it on the ramp while the engine's running, and you've got all these rods going from side to side.
Yeah.
And you can just manipulate the rods and make the car like lean over and stuff like that. It's like, or make it lift its back wheel off the ground.
Oh, I've seen you do that.
Yeah, you can actually get it to lift the back wheel.
Yeah.
Like it's a dog taking a leak. It's wicked.
How can you not like a car that does that? How can you not think
fun,
that's cool?
Isn't it?
It's great fun.
But everyone says these are shit, and you should have got a Mondeo or a Vectra.
I think the tide is just starting to turn. We're in that stage with the Xantia, I think, where we were with the BX probably 10 years ago, where there are a few people who kind of look at it and go, "Oh yeah, I remember those."
The problem with the BX looked funky.
Yeah.
So, and then it became deeply uncool and dated very quickly.
Yeah.
And now it's sort of enjoying it's coming back into the sort of as a classic. It's emerging because it looks funky.
Yeah.
These don't look funky.
No, but I think what they do instead is they look quite suave because they're quite sharp.
I think they are quite handsome.
So I think they're actually.
No, I think when the Xantia first came out, and they had the Chariots of Fire advert. Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
And it was with the dark blue VSX in the desert.
Oh.
Early VSX with the badge on that they're called Mark 1As.
Yeah.
Badge on the bonnet.
Yeah.
With the alloys and the 2-spoke wheel, leather, with buttons on the steering wheel, and that VSX interior and everything. Oh,
you can tell you're
just with the little 16 valve badge on the door. Because the 16 valve in those was the ZX 16 valve engine, or the one in the 405 MI16, the Phase 2. Only for the first couple of years. After that, it all goes wrong. The 16 valve becomes common and it's detuned, and they put the badge on the grille, which doesn't look right.
Is that because at that point they brought out the V6 as the range topper, so the 16 valve didn't have to be the range topper anymore?
No, not really. I think it's because the 2-litre 8 valve was so long in the tooth.
Oh, right.
Because it's basically the engine that was in the 205 and the BX. So it's quite coarse, quite rough. Obviously, Mondeo was 16 valve.
Yeah.
Those petrol engines in the Mondeo were quite a long way ahead of the XUs by that point.
Yeah.
the Vectra had
the engines were always the good thing about Vectras.
Rover 600, 16 valve.
Yep.
Primera, 16 valve.
It's quite mad actually that Citroen soldiered on with an 8 valve in this as long as they did.
Citroen's forte was never really engines.
No, it's true.
It's only when they've the diesels they got very good at, obviously with Peugeot. But so they came out, they detuned the 16 valve. That became, and then they did a 1.8 16 valve. That became commonplace. But weirdly, this doesn't have that. This has the 2-litre 8 valve turbo, which behaves like a diesel. Yeah,
because that's really, as you've always put it to me, that's kind of the slight letdown with the Activa is actually the engine.
It yes and no. It actually suits the car quite well because it's got a lot of low down luggy torque.
Yeah.
And when you tweak the boost, which I will, and the way it hauls itself out of corners, it's like it's got a trick diff in it or something. It really because it doesn't lean. So you don't get that inside scrabbling so much.
I think that's what a lot of people forget is when you get body roll. Part of the problem is not only does it feel horrible and it destabilises the car, but it also reduces the contact patch of the tyre.
Yeah,
because obviously where you're rolling, part of the tyre is being rolled off the ground.
Yeah.
So when you maintain the body roll in a car like this, you maintain your contact patch, so you maintain a lot of grip and traction.
I'd imagine one of these with a limited slip diff in the front would be an absolute monster.
Pretty ridiculous.
So this is good for that sort of thing. The turbo cuts in low. And it gets going, but it runs out of puff high up, and it's not a driver's car at all. And that's kind of the thing. I don't know if Citroen missed a trick or not. I can't figure it out. If you'd asked younger me, I'd have said, yeah, absolutely. They should have made a hot version. But now I don't know, because no one really thought of Citroen as a hot hatch manufacturer.
No, but I do think you could level the accusation that the Activa never really knew what it wanted to be.
Well, to Citroen, this was the ultimate... Citroen's thing has always been... This really is a Citroen podcast. Citroen's, it's supposed to be about the 90s, but we will. Citroen's thing has always been...
Stay tuned.
Yeah. The thing behind all their thinking, behind all the innovation, the SM, the DS, the CX, the XM, there's the Activa.
Yep.
The number one thing is safety.
Is it?
That's what everything...
Interesting.
The basis of everything is safety. It was the basis with the SM. If you go through the architect, the literature, the sales literature, it's all about contact patch on the road, stability.
Right, yeah.
You know, being able to
makes
deal
sense.
with the unknown.
Makes
And
sense.
that's what this was, the ultimate version of that. It
Yeah.
was. It doesn't matter what you throw at it, it will
Yeah.
keep you. That's why they weren't fussed that it didn't have much feedback in the steering,
yeah.
and the brakes have no feel at all.
Yeah.
They weren't fussed. They were like, put your trust in the car.
See, I buy that to a point, but then why are you fitting it with sort of slightly sportier trim and a spoiler and, you know, all this, that and the other? I think there was definitely I can feel, I could be wrong here, but you
probably are.
You probably am, I usually am. You can kind of feel a kind of tug of war within the development team at Citroen, between the people who are like, yeah, we can make this a sporty range topper that's like a bit of a BMW rival, and the people who are like, well, no, that's not what the point of this car is.
I think they just had to come up with ways to differentiate it from a normal Xantia, because these were not cheap cars.
I know, yeah.
I think when this came out in 1995, I think it was just under 18 grand.
Which would have been probably BMW 3 Series territory.
Oh, yeah.
And the problem you've got there is that obviously you have to find a reason that people are going to want to pay 18 grand for this, because I think it's fair to say not a lot of people are going to pay that for the engineering, even though
no, that's the thing.
Ostensibly you probably should. People are going to say, well, what am I getting that actually is, what am I getting other than that? What am I getting that makes it worth me spending BMW money on a Citroen?
The problem they always had was no one's going to pay that for a Citroen.
Yeah, well, exactly, and especially when it would have probably depreciated quite heavily as well. You know.
Yeah, and they were complex cars, and then if you happen to drive one that hadn't been looked after or hadn't been maintained by people who knew what they were doing, then you'd end up with a rubbish one anyway. I mean, you see these things, like, you don't see them at the lights at all. That's bollocks. When's the last time you saw one of these on the road? Full stop.
Any Xantia, let alone an Activa.
Well, yeah, but the thing you see with you see Activas at the lights, they do the Activa shuffle. Yeah, they'll be at the lights and they'll just lean to one side and they'll suddenly start nodding off, and then they'll like that and they go like this again, and it's just.
How can you not love a car that does that? How can you not
supposed to do it?
But how can you not think that's quirky and fun and hilarious and adorable? You know?
It's.
I would laugh so much every time my car just fell over a bit at the lights, like it was pissed.
It does. That's what it
sensational.
Does. It's like it's getting bored waiting to go.
That's just brilliant. I would buy it for that alone.
Yeah.
Here, have my £18,000. I want a car that falls over. Take it.
Yeah.
Keep your base spec.
Well, he didn't do that from new.
Oh, did they not?
No, it's when the joints and the linkages start to get a little bit worn, and some of the hydraulics pressures are a little bit low. You know, the spheres are a little bit tired, because this has 11 spheres on it.
Yeah.
Oh, there was 11 or 10?
It's a lot, either way.
Oh, damn. I hate doing these podcasts because I forget things I know.
Yeah.
No, it's 10.
That's what my life is like always, not just when I'm doing a podcast.
I walk into the kitchen and get the knife out the drawer, and I've got the bread, and I have the butter, and I'm like,
can't work out.
Jesus, what am I supposed to do with that? Yeah, it's like that.
That's the problem I have in life, as I say.
No, it's. I think. Yeah, they probably did. The marketing team probably did have. The marketing team probably said, "Look, we've got to do something. We've got to put a bigger bumper on it or a spoiler. It's got to have something."
I think that's probably, you can feel that in the.
Yeah. Otherwise, no one's going to buy it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But and I think to be fair, it didn't work because no one did.
Well, no. I think that's the problem. Is you end up therefore with that slightly confused.
That's what it was.
Yeah,
that's what it was. It wasn't an ST24 rival.
No, well, exactly.
Because an ST24 had the skirts and the V6.
And I think that was the problem, is people probably got into it expecting it to be something a lot more along those lines,
possibly.
like a Vectra GSR or something like that, and then they were quite disappointed.
You'd be disappointed by the engine, yeah.
Exactly, you know, but it wasn't as quick.
The engine was known as the 2-litre CT, which stood for constant torque. And it's one of the first cars I've ever known where the peak torque figure was quoted in a rev band.
Yes.
Not as a specific number.
What's so funny about that is, I don't know whether this was the first car to do that, but nowadays that is pretty much constant across the board.
That's because modern cars all do that.
They're all engineered to do that. I don't want to put my neck on the line and say this was the first car that did that, because probably the XM had the CT in it as well, didn't it? But
yeah, the XM did. Yeah.
I don't know whether that was the first engine that was engineered to do that.
You don't always see that written down. It's only in some literature they have it as a range. A lot of the time they just give a number, and it is low anyway. It's something like,
I've seen the power graph on these, and it just goes, the torque graph. Sorry, it just goes up, and then it's like a table,
just a flat line.
It's just a flat line, which I remember back in the day, you'd look at that and that looks really odd. Whereas nowadays, if you look at torque graphs for most modern cars,
they were kind of ahead of the time.
Exactly like
the difference is the economy, because this thing is horrendously
really thirsty. Yeah,
they're so thirsty. They're believed to be as bad as the V6.
Yeah.
You know, this. I mean, if you take this on a run and go, which I would like to do, I'd like to go to France in it for a little bit. But if you took this on a run and went gentle with it, you might get 30 to the gallon, like low 30s.
Nice.
But most of the time, you're talking low 20s. It's so inefficient.
Yeah.
But the V6 is the one to have, but we didn't get them in right-hand drive.
Yeah.
Because they'd have had to have. It was to do with the type approval, and they'd have had to have done their own type approval for it and crash test it as its own model, and it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
Because there were things that would have needed moving on the subframe and things.
Yeah, and you're going to sell, what, 3 of them?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But it's a shame because with a V6, I've never driven a V6, but I imagine that does make it a little bit more the kind of sporty, because the gear ratios are shorter, it revs, it's got the soundtrack, they sound great. I kind of think that probably would be quite a good car to drive.
Yeah.
But
I think, I love Activas, but I think the Xantia in general is a car that has kind of fallen through the cracks, and a lot of people, nobody would pay any heed to a Xantia these days, yet you just don't see them anymore. They've all disappeared. And I've owned a couple. I've owned one you owned before. My first Xantia actually was a 1.8 SX, which was it was literally white.
Is that a white one?
Absolutely vanilla.
I remember you brought that to me.
Unbelievably vanilla.
It was like, you've managed to find the most boring Citroen you can find. I bought a Hydro Citroen, and it's like, this is exciting. And it's like, it's not.
It was, because it was my university runaround. And what was so great about that car was I paid 400 or 500 quid for it, because it had been it'd been a finance repossession. And I had a big dent in the back wing, but other than that, it was immaculate. But it didn't have any history with it whatsoever.
But it was a facelift.
It was a facelift. But I sold it. But I ran it for 6 months and then sold it for 1,100 quid. So it was the first car I've really made a good profit on and gone, oh, that worked. I actually bought something that was.
I'm going to become a salesman.
Yeah, well, it didn't work, did it? To be fair, I never actually really tried properly to become a car salesman. I just wasn't very good. I'm not geared up for being a car salesman.
I'm not geared up for it at all. I hate buying and selling cars.
Yeah.
I despise it. But
somewhere in the back of my mind, in theory, I like the idea of it, because I like the idea of, but the problem is, it's just because I like the idea of driving lots of cars.
Yeah, which is why I started to do it when I was younger, and realised that, well, I got sacked before I could realise that it wasn't for me. But
you were forcibly told it was not for you.
I was stitched up, is what I was.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's a story there.
Yeah. Well, no, I won't go into it now.
Another time.
Because I still have revenge to take, so I don't. This was like 20 years ago.
This is a really good.
20 years ago. Just over 20. Yeah, over 20 years ago.
You're slow at revenge.
Well, it's brewing.
Is it?
Yeah. I'm an opportunist. I wait for the opportunity.
It's going to be fermented by the time it comes out. Crikey.
Oh yeah, there'll be deaths
fermented
involved.
Revenge.
Yeah, there'll be death. This will go down as evidence. This podcast is the opposite of an alibi. It's like, it's motive.
This feels like a really good opportunity to remind everyone that you can send reader questions in by email if you want to. One of them could be, I really want Rich to tell the story about his time in car sales.
A Rover dealer.
You can email us at overboardpod@gmail.com. You can find us on many different forms of social media. Pick one, we'll probably be there. You can leave a comment under one of our posts. Get in touch. Make Rich tell the story. Come on.
It doesn't paint well on me as well. Why not, does it? No, I'm innocent.
I love that.
It makes someone look very, very petty.
I'm terribly guilty.
I was rude.
No, I'm not guilty, actually.
I was rude to somebody.
Oh, really? What, a customer or?
No. Someone I used to work with, and he won't know that I know it's him.
Oh.
I was rude to him, and then he stitched me up in future endeavours. Okay. He kept trying to get me sacked from future jobs.
Oh, gosh. Wow.
And it worked. Amazingly.
That's
rinning up, making up things about me.
I've
just told everyone what happened.
Great. Well, that peer pressure worked.
Yeah, that worked, didn't it? Yeah, I held out a long time on that one, but until I worked for.
So you've just removed the incentive we magically worked in for people to contact.
Yeah, no, I told you I'm not a good salesman. But but I will give credit to a manager I had who was a relatively young manager called Phil at Camberley Auto Factors I used to work for, and he told him to. GFM.
Oh, okay.
No. GFH.
What? Oh, GFH, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to go GFY, but yeah, GFH.
Yeah, well, he would have said, yeah.
Yeah.
He would have said that. He had a BMW Z3, which he liked, and he called me into his office, and he got very like, oh, God, here we go again. And he went, tell me what happened. I was like, okay, you want the story? You want to actually hear what happened? Yeah, I want to hear what happened. I told him, and he was like, right, okay, well, I feel better for telling him to go away now. I was like, and that's when it ended.
That's nice.
So it did end. So thank you to Phil.
Yeah, fair play.
Yeah.
Thanks, Phil.
So Yeah, I don't really. But the car sales place, it did not. They were not like that. They actually treated me quite badly. Looking back at it.
We'll talk about the motor trade in another episode because it's.
I drove a
I've
Kia
worked in trade as
Magentis very badly that day. Very, very badly that day because they used to sell Kias.
Yeah.
They sold MG Rovers and
I knew where you
Kias.
worked then. In that case.
Yeah.
Close to where I lived.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I drove a
We
Kia.
won't mention the name, but I know exactly where you worked.
No,
yeah.
but I drove a Kia Magentis very irresponsibly, and I thought I'd been caught.
Oh.
I thought I'd been spotted, and I got called into an office, and I thought that's what it was about.
Right.
So I was on the back foot.
Yeah.
And they were asking me what they thought it was about, and it wasn't what I thought it was. I thought.
So what did you own up to driving the Kia badly?
No, I was kind of keeping my cards close to my chest, but then that kept me. But then I was.
Because I would have gone in there and they'd have been like, "What's this about?" Like, look, I know it was just. It was the
first time I'd driven a V6.
I was driving and they'd have been like, "That's not what you're here for."
Oh, that's two things then.
Yeah, exactly.
Two strikes.
I'd have been useless.
But the thing is that, to be honest, if I look back at it, I actually could have probably claimed, well, you're in a probation period, so you haven't got a lot of rights, but I could have claimed for, probably made a case for unfair dismissal or something like that, because it did it with no proof at all. And caught me off guard because I was preparing my defence about driving the Kia Magentis very badly. So I hadn't even thought about this other thing, because this was the first time it had happened.
Right, I see.
So, it was just...
Good.
Yeah.
Look, the trade, I've had some time in the trade, and I had nothing anywhere near as bad as that, but there are some really nice people in the motor trade, but there are also some really...
Yeah, the ones who haven't been in it very long.
they haven't got out yet.
Yeah, well, once you've been in it a little while, it claims their soul.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're not...
Anyway, how many 90s cars did you sell?
Well,
I'm trying to segue. I sold, see what I'm doing
I sold
here?
one car.
You sold... Oh no!
I sold. But to be fair, I wasn't put out to, because I basically, I wasn't a car salesman at all.
Yeah.
I went up to them cold at a motor show,
right?
Because they had a sign saying they wanted salesmen.
Is this the famous Fleming Park Motor Show?
Yes.
Nice.
But it was
That's
held.
the second time we've mentioned.
But it was held. It wasn't in Fleming Park that time. It was held in the roundabout at Wide Lane.
In a roundabout.
Yeah, it was in the well, not in the roundabout. It was in the fields.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah,
the rugby club or football.
Yeah, gotcha.
And they said they wanted salesmen, and I went up, and they were like, "Well, I think we want actual salesmen." Like, I was an 18. Hiccup, windy pops. I was an 18-year-old youth, and then I don't know how, but like, what's that program I done where, there's a guy who normally talks. He's normally really dumb, and then he just suddenly goes off on one when someone presses him on something, and he talks really eloquently and makes his case, and goes and then like he gets to the end of it and nearly faints. He's like, "Whoa, what just happened?" He nearly passes out from like. Well, that's what I did. I went in and just said,
I believe the term is an idiot savant.
Maybe
that's probably not politically correct these days, but I believe that's what they used to call them, is idiot savant.
I don't know. I went in and managed to sell myself into getting an interview, and then boss the interview.
Nice.
And ended up being a car salesman. So I went in as a trainee. They weren't even looking to take a trainee on, but they saw something in me.
Hey.
So I went in.
They saw the ability to drive a Kia Magentis very badly.
That's what it was. It wasn't just a Kia Magentis I drove badly.
I drove lots of things very badly.
There was an MG ZR 160.
Oh, wow.
An MGF.
Gosh.
Kia Sedona. Kia Sedona got driven to the DVLA quite rashly.
Oh, dear.
But, the only car I sold the whole time I was there was they let me loose on a customer who came in, and I sold them a used Rover 220 SLD. So it's the bubble shape Rover 200. It was a used one, and actually you get quite good margins on used cars. In some cases, better margins than new.
Yeah, I've heard.
So I would have got decent money. They said if you got the commission out of that, but you didn't because you got sacked. But yeah, you'd have had the commission. Amazing. And you actually would have done okay, because they didn't give much for it. It was a Nightfire red. Oh, Nightfire. And they traded.
My dad's Rover.
And they did a trade-in, so I had to do a trade-in as well.
Oh, amazing.
They traded in a Mark V Escort, like a real early, like 1.3 in white, 5-door, H-Reg or J-Reg or something. It was something miserable.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was like, it was just like, they were like, right, they've gone out on the test drive. While they're on the test drive, you've got to appraise their car. Go and get it. So I went and got it, drove it into the yard, And they were like, right, okay, you have to look at it and say what it's like. And I was just, it's shit. And they were like, right, we know that.
It's funny because the way you review cars, the way you kind of assess cars hasn't really changed all that much, because it's pretty much the same as what you said last week about the car we had in.
Yes, but it all depends whether that car is shit or not.
I mean, that's a fair point, yeah.
If it's a shit car, then I'll say...
The Mark 5 Escorts are... Look...
No, they're not shit, they're shite.
Interesting distinction there you've drawn.
Yeah.
Interesting distinction you've drawn there. Yeah. Look, I know there will be people out there listening to this who do like a Mark 5 Escort.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put my cards on the table and say, I'm sorry, I just don't like them. I just don't like them.
But I'm
not going to take it away from you. If you like a Mark 5 Escort, I'm not going to sit here and say...
Well, we are talking about cars of the 90s, and that did come in at the beginning of the 90s.
That's a great segue. That's a great, well done.
Segue. Yeah, thank you.
Well done.
Yeah.
Good work.
So, I think the Mark 5 Escort was pretty cack.
For me, the Mark 5 Escort was the worst of them. That was like the worst of what the 90s churned out in terms of it just being pile them high, sell them cheap. Because
the thing is, if you look at the Mark 5 Escort, if you look at the ingredients, then it's actually, it shouldn't be horrendous.
No, but that's
because it's got independent suspension.
No, it hasn't.
Yeah, they did. They
had
a
twist beam on the back.
No, the Mark 5.
Mark 5, yeah, because they downgraded. From the Mark 4 had independent suspension. The Mark 5 had a twist beam on the back.
Oh, well, that's shit then.
Yeah.
I thought they were independent on the back.
I'm going to get a ton of comments saying you're wrong, but I'm pretty sure it had a twist beam on the back.
I thought that was its only redeeming feature, is that it had independent suspension.
No, because Ford... But the problem with the Mark 5 was, on the face of it, like you say, it wasn't necessarily a bad car. It's just Ford decontented everything. They stripped all the cost out of it to try and make the profit margin as great as possible. And what you ended up with was a car that fleet buyers would buy quite happily because it was just literally like bran flakes in automotive form. But it was just so miserable. You got in it and the doors clanged and the fabric on the doors was like this thin,
Oh, it was that revolutionary type of... how did they do it? It wasn't hydro dipping, obviously, but it was like...
No, it was glued.
It was like vacuum formed or something.
And it all came all wrinkled after time.
The Fiesta was like that as well, I think.
And all the upholstery on the seats all like formed to the foam underneath it. And then, of course, it all came off with time and went all saggy and looked horrible.
It's not going to... It wasn't...
And the fleet buyers... and it was just...
The fleet buyers liked it because it was cheap and everything like that.
Yeah.
But they didn't like it because all their employees committed suicide.
Hated them.
After having it for a while. And then they ran out of employees.
Yeah.
And getting good staff. Good staff are hard to find.
To be fair, we do have to thank the Mark 5 Escort for something. Because, hear me out here. It was so bad that Ford realised we can't do this anymore. And that thinking was what then gave us the Focus, the Mondeo,
I've never had the
so on and so forth. What do you mean you've never?
Well, the Mondeo would have been... I don't buy... The Mondeo would have been in development kind of... Well, the Mondeo was in development in the late 80s.
It would have been, yeah.
So, I think...
But I think the reaction to the Escort...
Yeah, maybe they tweaked it at the end.
Is what made them go, actually, we need to make this half.
And I've never had a Focus, so I don't care.
Focuses are great. They're really good. I mean,
I had a KA.
KAs are great as well.
I had a KA.
All those great Fords that then came out in the late 90s are partly a reaction to the terrible response the Mark 5 Escort got.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we can thank the Mark 5
I used to get travel sick in them.
Mark 5 Escorts?
Fords of the 90s, excluding the Mondeo.
Okay.
Mondeo feels like it's not... It feels like it's built by a different company.
Well, I know, yeah. Mondeos are great.
Like the Escort, the Fiesta, there's the KA, actually. There's a little bit of similarity in that, but there's kind of a feel that those cars have. Mondeo feels like it's built by a completely different manufacturer.
Yeah, I know.
It feels like it's more Japanese, if anything.
I know what you mean. Look, Mondeos, I think, going back to cars, our cars of the 90s, loose, ostensible theme that we're going for here. Cars, the Mondeo, I remember it winning, we talked about this before we came on, I remember it winning all the group tests.
Yeah.
They were brilliant. And there was just something you get when you sit in a Mondeo. Everything is just exactly where you need it to be. It feels comfortable. It feels like it's built around you, which, like you say, no other Ford really did in that.
The Sierra tried, didn't it? But the Sierra was a bit haphazard.
And the Sierra, it was very haphazard. It was very cheaply made as well. The Sierra's dashboard was horribly plasticky. Like you could wobble them. You could wobble the whole dashboard around.
What, though, you want a nice dashboard, nicely made.
Yeah, these are great. Going back to Xantias, I mean,
the build quality.
So here's the thing about going back to Xantias. Can you do your? Oh, there's a bit of free play in the
quite a bit of free. Yeah, but it's 130,000 miles.
That's a fair point.
But look at those.
Yeah, that's all right. It's got window switches. look, Xantias, I think, were really, really good in their time. A lot of those 90s Retmobiles, actually, there was kind of this power race, if you like, to build the best Retmobile, because that was where the money was at the time.
Yeah.
And so I actually think that was a really competitive marketplace at the time.
Yeah,
even things like the Mark 1 Laguna was a really good car. D-segment, that's right.
D-segment was hot topic.
Mark 1 Laguna was a really good car. Peugeot 406 was a really good car. There were a
405
lot of really
when you came into the 90s with, wasn't it?
True. And the thing is, all these cars are kind of forgotten nowadays because they were so bread and butter. They haven't quite made it to classic status yet, but they're not really in banger territory anymore because there aren't any of them left, you know.
But the crazy thing with the 90s, you forget that cars like the Alfa 156
true.
is 90s.
Yeah, true.
I mean, you just look at that.
You can even sort of see a divide. I always think of the 90s as having a bit of a divide between the early 90s and the late 90s, where there was this change in the way. We've talked about it before with Mark IV Golfs and BMWs. There was this change from probably 1995, 96 onwards, where suddenly everyone kind of upped their game.
Yeah.
And everything just...
Well, the difference between this and a BX
is
crazy.
But even the Alphas, even the 156s felt really well built.
Yeah,
for an Alpha. You compare a 156 to a 155.
Yeah.
The difference is stratospheric.
No, I had a 156. I liked it.
Yeah, they're good cars. They're half decent cars.
Yeah, I like the 156. There's lots of cars in there. But I mean, I think Rover were probably instrumental in that because probably with a bit of Honda's input. But
yeah, I feel like Rover peaked in the early 90s, and then because of their financial troubles, when everyone else was just lifting off, they were coasting down, and that was the problem. That was the real problem you had with all the kind of the 400s and the 45s.
But that was all off the back of Hondas, though. Like Hondas in the 80s had that kind of decent build. So,
and the problem was that as everyone was, the 600 was a really nicely built car.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
and the problem was that as everybody else was going up, Rover was on the downswing, and that was really hurt them, I think, in terms of comparative quality.
You stick with the 90s in the D segment is probably the greatest segment of cars.
Is it the great? Yeah. Do you know what?
That's
a really interesting point.
The selection that you got in that particular
you could choose from,
the D
and
segment,
the variety.
You're talking about large family cars. That's what they were. Well, large family cars, and if you're what car, you might class them as compact executives.
Yeah.
So you had the Alfa 156. We had the 155.
Stroke 156.
But you had the 156. You had the Audi A4.
Yep.
You had the BMW E36.
Yep.
You had
and
this.
latterly the E46 in the late 90s.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, the E46 in the late 90s.
Really good.
You had this.
Yep.
You had the Fiat Tempra.
Okay, let's let that one slide.
You had the Mondeo.
I like Tempras, to be fair. I quite like
it. In fact, the Mirea came out within the 90s.
Mirea, yeah. The Mirea was a bit of an odd one in that it was never quite big enough to fall into the D segment. It kind of straddled C and D because it was basically booted C segment hatchback.
Yeah.
Same with the Rover 45. The Rover 45 Saloon was the same sort of
I class that as C segment.
Yeah. But it was priced against, that was the problem. It was priced against D segment and it was just too small.
Well, you had that, you had the Mondeo.
Mm-hmm.
You had the Honda Accord, which was the same as the
great cars, really good cars,
600, and then the later version as well. That was 90s.
Yep. The Primeras were pretty good as well. I mean, they were boring, but they were very, very good.
The X-Type came out in the 90s, didn't it? The X-Type.
Just about. I think it was 99, possibly. Yeah. So it's squeezing it in there. But the X-Type wasn't actually, no. Was it a bit later than that? No, it must have been later because X-Type was a Mondeo Mark III under the skin, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it would have been...
they were 2000.
So it would have been early 2000s.
Yeah, maybe I'll take the X-Type back out then.
Yeah.
But you got the Primera, you got the Mazda MX, you got the Mazda 626. The late one was the boring one, but you also had the early one.
The early one was
with
quite
the swoopy
neat.
spoiler.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You also had the Zedos 6.
Oh, yeah.
Which I really liked.
Great cars. Fabulous. Really interesting.
You had the...
I can't get over the variety in that segment. It's mad when you think about it.
Then you've got the 405, the Laguna, the Mitsubishi Galant.
Yeah. That was a fantastic looking car as well. The Galant was tremendous.
You had the Rover 600.
Yeah.
The Saab 900.
Yes.
You had the Vectra.
Yep.
You had the Passat.
Yep.
You had the Volvo S40 and V40, which means you also had the Mitsubishi Charisma. On which they're based.
You can't win them all.
No. But one of the first cars with a direct injection petrol engine. I think.
That's true, yeah.
The
GDI engine. Yeah.
So you had all these cars. You had that range of cars
to choose from.
I mean, technically, you had the BX. If you think
for
about
a short period,
there was a period. It is a decade.
Yeah.
You could buy a BX. Or an Alfa 156 in the same segment.
But doesn't that shows you what we're talking about?
I love it.
How things.
I love that.
How things went up from.
You don't get anywhere near that variety in any of the other segments, in the super minis, in the small hatches.
Super minis, though, I think I agree with you, but I think there was quite a lot of variety in the super minis. You had a huge amount.
I think that was more in the 80s.
But I do tend to agree with you that actually, that D segment was a tremendous thing. I remember, it was always, what would you, of course we haven't even mentioned the Passat, the B5 Passat when it came out.
The later Passat.
Just came along and romped away with every win at that point because it was the perceived quality in them was so just head and shoulders.
Well, it was basically the same as the A4, wasn't
it? Pretty much,
it was, yeah. But slightly cheaper.
Yeah. But not technically the same. The one was transverse, the other was longitudinal. But yeah, in terms of quality and the way it felt like a Mini A4.
They were longitudinal. The
B5 was transverse, I think.
Which one's the B5?
B5 is the later Passat, late 90s Passat.
Yeah,
I'm going out on a limb here. I think they were transverse.
They're in line. I'm pretty sure they got a transaxle.
My dad had one, and I thought they were longitudinal. I would. Okay, I will. I'm not going to push that point because I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling that was where the differentiation came in.
I'm starting to doubt myself now.
I could be wrong.
I mean, I don't care actually. But, just really, that's the other point of it. But I think for that segment, I don't think you're going to get that range.
No.
That variety.
I miss it. I miss
from
that
the Saab
variety.
900, a 3-door Saab 900, or a Mazda Z-DOS 6.
Yeah.
Or a Honda Accord, or a Citroen that goes up and down, or a Vectra with a massive body kit and a big V6 in it, or an Alfa 156.
See, the funny thing about the Vectras is I'm just going to mention the Vectras briefly, because Vectras got pilloried in their time, and I don't think they were great cars, but when you look at the standard of everything else, it wasn't the Vectra was necessarily a bad car.
Well,
it was just outshone by everything else.
They were accused of being dull.
Well, they were quite dull.
Yeah, but they were.
But they were pretty solidly
built. There were much
comfy.
more dull cars out there than the Vectra. The Vectra had the funky door mirrors.
Yeah.
It also had this bit of styling I liked when it first came out, where the indicator at the front, it used to loop down, and the bumper became the bumper. And I used to see that as a kid and go, I appreciate that.
Do you know what other thing I liked about the Vectra? Is that depending on the spec, you got either clear or smoked indicators at the back. The tail lights changed.
Is that a fact?
Yeah. So I think it was the lower spec ones had clear indicators, and the SRIs and things had smoked indicators at the back.
Oh, of course. Yeah. You might be. Yes. Yeah. No.
Which I thought was quite a funky little kind of conceit that you change the tail light depending on the spec.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure other people did it. I think full
one-upmanship with your neighbour, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. You've got smoke tail. You've got clear lights.
That one. I think an SRI and the GSIs, they all look great.
It was all about that. That was the era.
And I like the dashboard, but that kind of look swoopy dash.
Yeah.
One of the first cars with an infotainment screen.
Yes.
Up in the top. That if you think about it, that was higher than everything.
Yeah.
And it had that lid across the top.
Yeah.
And it swoops into the doors. And I think they had chrome door handles as well.
Probably, because that was a thing. Yeah, that feels right.
I think the Vectra got an unfair rap.
Yeah, possibly. They were comfy. They were really good. The one thing the Vectra was really good. I remember at the time reading what they were really good at was they were quiet on the motorway and they were comfortable, and that's really what they were designed to be. Fleet managers' cars. It didn't have the
best diesel engines, did they? That was
because it was an Isuzu 1.7,
wasn't it, by that point? But
which was the Cavaliers. It was basically the Cavaliers diesel, wasn't it, that had been brought in. I'm going to take us out of D segment just for a minute, though, just to remember the Amiga, because I think that was another great Vauxhall that was massively underrated, and another 90s car that I don't think people are paying enough attention to.
Quite a funky looking car, I think.
Really handsome.
I think I think it doesn't get the recognition it deserves. It would just get lumped in with being a boring car.
Yeah.
But if you look back at them, when they first came out, the styling was kind of out there in the way the Scorpio was.
Yeah.
But much better.
But better. It was very modern when it came out, and I actually really liked the facelift as well. When they just gave it a few little sharp
mad
edges.
On the facelift. I like the grille that cut into the lower part of the bumper. And stuff. I quite like that.
I did what they did. They did like an Ermshire body kit for the facelift that had a big jutting bumper and an egg crate grille. And I remember seeing one of those when I was a trolley pusher around her at Sainsbury's.
Of course, she works at Sainsbury's.
That's what I did.
I was at Tesco.
Heathen!
And Asda. You were saying, amazing it wasn't Marks and Spencer, actually.
I was going to say, at least it wasn't Waitrose. Come on.
Waitrose.
No, but when I remember one night absolutely being stopped in my tracks by this silver Amiga 3-litre with the Ermshire, and it was an estate as well, with the Ermshire body kit on it. It just looked so good. And I remember thinking, that should not look that good. It has no right to look that good. So again, another 90s car. So this is my contention.
That's E-segment.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
E-segment, yeah.
Because this is my contention, is I think 90s cars haven't had their time. I think 90s cars are peak car.
I agree.
I think that era...
Just reel off the cars that you could get in the 90s.
Yeah.
R33 Skyline.
Yeah.
E39 5 Series.
Yeah.
The A6 with the swoopy.
Yeah.
When did that come? What do you call that? The B6 or C?
I was corrected on this.
You
the
were
other day.
corrected
It
by
was a
someone.
C4.
C4,
A6, I think. Yeah.
You got that. You had things like this.
Yeah.
You go into the hot hatches. You had the 106 GCI, the Saxo VTS, the Punto Turbo.
Yeah.
The Polo 16 valve. You had the. Did the MGZs come out then, or were they just after that?
Oh, I think they were early 2000s.
I think it was early 2000s, wasn't it? But the Rover
But
45 came out.
But don't
in the
forget
90s.
that the MGZs were very retro for their time, so they were effectively 90s cars.
They were
that
90s
come out a little
cars,
bit late.
But you had the Rover. I mean, the 400, the Honda version. Don't forget
when the 400 first came out, when it was in period, it just got too old basically. But when it was in period, it was a good car. It was well regarded.
I drove one. I drove a diesel version, and it was all right. Actually,
yeah, they were
I thought it was okay.
They were half decent. You know?
But yeah, you had, Vauxhall Calibra.
Yeah.
4th gen Prelude.
Jeez, look, talk about variety. Think of all the coupes you could buy in the 90s and all the little convertibles.
406 Coupe, Calibra, Probe.
Corrado.
Corrado. You could buy...
Hyundai Coupes. Do you remember Hyundai Coupes?
Yeah.
I thought they were good looking cars. I like those.
Mazda MX-6.
Mazda MX-6, yeah.
Honda Accord Coupe.
Yes, good shout.
Civic Jordan. That's not a coupe, but the Civic Jordan.
But it's worth a mention, isn't it? Come on.
Yeah, there's just so much that can. 306. I can't stop thinking the 306 GCO6, Cleo Williams. Yeah. This is bonkers. And I know Rover Tomcat.
I know you don't like cabriolets, but the 90s was an era when you could buy cheap, affordable cabriolets to go and take the top off if you wanted to. 306 cabriolets, Megane cabriolets, Fiat Punto cabriolets.
Yeah, there were some bad things as well, I suppose.
306 cabriolets, actually,
the E36 cabriolet.
That's a handsome car.
I had a toy one of those, a Maisto.
I had a toy one of those as well.
And the rear things popped up.
Yeah, they were great.
But yeah, I mean, and then supercars in the 90s as well. NSX.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Ferrari 355. 993 turbo.
People ask me sometimes, what's the best car you've ever driven? And it takes me a long time to think about it. And I don't want to nail my colours to the mast too hard, but I really think probably one of the top 5 is a 3.2 litre NSX, which I know it's not quite 90s because the 3.2 litre came out later. But honestly,
just as an all-round thing,
you're going to hate me. So Honda did a trip. They just had some budget to spend, obviously, and they got the 3 NSXs they had out of the Heritage Fleet and a couple of Type Rs, and we went over to Retroreveal, and they had a bunch of 5 journalists, and we went over to Retroreveal in these. And
you are within punching range at the moment.
I drove the. They had the new NSX. Sorry, they had the new NSX.
I like that as well.
Early pop-up headlight. First,
is that the red one on their fleet?
It's the red one that's
an auto, yeah.
Which is slightly disappointing. But I drove that one into Paris, and driving that into Paris in traffic, I was like, I'm glad I'm in this one.
Yeah. And it looks the nicest as well.
It gets a bad rap, but I also think, let's say you can't drive a manual for some reason. The fact they made that means you can enjoy and experience an NSX if you go. So I think that's a really nice thing. But the gold, they had a gold facelift. I don't like the facelift for the bubbly lights.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But it had the 3.2.
I know the one you mean. I've seen that car.
Oh, that was honestly.
Yeah, right. You can shut up now.
Didn't stop grinning. So yeah, and you're right. The supercars of the 90s as well. Diablo was just an amazing thing.
McLaren F1.
Well, quite. There you go.
XJ220. Or does that count as 80s? No, that was 90s when it came out, wasn't it?
No, it was 89, I think.
Oh, was it?
I have a feeling it was 89. I have a feeling. I might be wrong. But no, I completely agree with you. I really do think the 90s...
Best era for touring car racing.
Yeah, well, yeah, quite.
The Super Tourist. Best era for rallying.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, people say, Group B. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Really? Go into the 90s, look at the cars. McRae, Burns, Mackinnon.
Yep.
You got...
Celicas.
Ford. You got Science.
Subarus.
You've got Celicas. You've got Subarus. You've got...
Focuses.
The Focus, the Zara came in, I think.
Yes.
Or did it? No.
Oh, no. No, that would have been... Oh, no. Zara would have come in the 90s. Because they did a pre-facelift kit car, didn't they?
Yeah, the kit car, yeah. I don't know if... Yeah, I think that was 90s. I think it was like 99.
Yeah, late 90s, definitely.
But yeah, you had all these manufacturers, Mitsubishi in it. You had Vauxhall doing it. You had Ford doing it. It was just such a time to be alive.
And here's the thing. Here's the other thing about 90s cars. This is why I reckon they are peak car. Is because the 90s was an era when you have just enough modernity to make these cars still reliable, relatively reliable these days. I appreciate the one we're sat in's broken at the moment, which isn't really proving my point very well.
No,
however,
it's corrosion based though. One of the pipes has rusted away.
There are still plenty of 90s cars tooling around, and it wouldn't take much to get this one back on the road and reliable. It would drive fairly reliable. You'd drive this to Scotland and back quite happily, wouldn't you?
Well, I've driven it to Cirencester.
There you go. It's almost Scotland.
Yeah.
From here it is, anyway.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing. Yet, despite that, you still have enough connection, noise, feel, however you want to determine it, character, that they don't feel that you kind of miss in a modern car.
Yeah, you don't get it in the later stuff.
And that's why I think they're kind of at that fulcrum, if you like, between when things became too sanitized and when things were too unreliable.
In the 2000s, everything got a little bit more. And I know I like my MPVs, but everything got a little bit more MPV-like. Everything got a little bit taller and a little bit more upright. And the bonnets got a little bit shorter, and he started getting clap-hand wipers and all that kind of thing. Yeah. And the dashboard started getting deeper. Yeah. And I think that's when we started losing it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because if you look at this, like the first thing I thought, and I hadn't sat in a Xantia for ages when I first, it was actually the silver one. Yeah. When I first got that, I hadn't sat in one for ages, and the first thing I thought was, oh my God, it's so small. Because I remember them being big cars. My dad had one. I remember it being a big car. Yeah. But compared to cars nowadays, it's not. No, it's actually quite a small car. Yeah. And it's just,
you know, I would not go so far as to contend that it is safe. Certainly not by modern cars.
Oh no, you're very much dead in this.
Yeah, I'm not sure you would not compare with something like a BX or something like that.
Oh no,
no. There is a modicum.
There are worse ways to die.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There is a modicum of crash protection in a car like this. You know.
Yeah, but you say that, right? So this is the thing with the problem with safety in older cars is that it's a fluid thing because you can't go by the group tests on Euro NCAP
that's true.
or whatever, or any safety test on anything over 10 years old is void, really.
Yeah, quite.
Because they're all made of spot welds. Yeah. And all those spot welds are designed to pop in certain conditions with certain impacts. All the computer modelling they did computer modelling with BXs. So, you know, they were doing that with all these kind of cars in the 90s. Well, a little bit of corrosion under a few of these spot welds, it's going to behave completely different than how it's supposed to. So you have to accept that, you know, you could crash you could have two Mondeos and put them head on into the same wall at the same speed. Yeah. And one of them might be much better than the other one.
It's true.
So it's
even so, you know, I think the point still stands that you're getting better crash protection than an older car. You're not getting the same level of safety as a modern car. Let's not kid ourselves here.
You do have an airbag.
But you do have an airbag. You've got ABS, so your chances of avoiding a crash are greater because you've got ABS.
And I've got active anti-roll suspension.
Yeah, which means you will obviously be able to swerve out of the way no matter what the.
If an elk walks out in front of me, I won't hit it as long as I'm not going faster than 80 kilometres an hour. Yeah.
Look, I think we've covered some good ground here. I think we've decided 90s cars are the best cars.
I knew that before we started.
Well, yeah.
That was always my opinion.
Yeah, well, same.
And I think even my kids...
So what we're saying here is we've done nothing except just come here and sit and say what we think.
Yeah.
I suppose that's what a podcast is for, isn't it?
Well, no, you're supposed to interview people and
come to some groundbreaking conclusions.
Yeah, give the listeners something meaningful and insightful.
And what we've done is we just got on a Xantia and talked at them.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good note to end on, certainly.
Well, it's a note.
It's as good as any.
It'll do.
Yeah. So
it's suitable.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And we will see you next time on Overball. Bye!
Spice up your life. That was in the 90s.
That was the 90s. That was a really good reference.
Yeah.
Nice. Well done.
Thanks.